Hi, my name is Karolina Sieler, and I am a former law lecturer here in London, as well as the founder of a platform called firstclassllb.com, which helps law students get the first in both their essays and their exams. Today I want to talk to you about how you can start writing your law essays in order to get a first. So this very beginning of the process, of the writing process, is something that's very important, both because it can help you to save really a lot of time on unnecessary research and kind of unnecessary writing and rewriting of something that you created as your essay, and also because really this beginning of the process can determine whether or not you will manage to get a first. The thing that most first-class law students do in order to get a first whenever they start writing a law essay is they start by trying to recognize the type of a question asked. It's not something that is taught at law schools, or it's not something that your lecturer will mention to you, but there are actually several different types of questions that can be asked and that are typically asked by lecturers and set as an assignment. There is clearly a distinction between problem scenarios and essay questions, and if you are in at least your second term of year one, you will know by now that problem scenarios are those types of assignments that just describe a big scenario, big or sometimes a short one as well, that mentions different circumstances that happened to one person or to several people, and your task is to advise that person or each of the persons involved in the scenario about their position. Now, essay questions are a little bit more tricky. That's because they can be divided into different types of questions, even though your lecturer will not tell you about it. So there is something called a general essay question, and there is something called a specific essay question, and also a quotation essay question. The quotation essay question is typically one that involves a short quote that you are asked to discuss, but the general essay questions and the specific essay questions can vary depending on an assignment. I don't really have enough time to go into much detail about those different types of questions here, but I have included a very thorough explanation of what each of those types of questions involves and how you should approach them in your essays, including sort of a very detailed description of how you should structure your essays depending on whether they are a general essay question or a specific essay question or a quotation question. The course that I created is called First Class Law Essay Writing Course, and I'm going to provide a link to it down below. Now, once you have recognized the type of a question that is asked, you need to try to understand what is required. I know you'll have the urge to kind of see the question, read through it once or twice, and then just kind of try to get into the work mode and try to write and start writing. But the first thing you need to do is take a step back and try to ask yourself a question of, okay, is this a problem scenario or an essay question? If it's a problem scenario, what is my task here? What am I supposed to do? If it's an essay question, what am I supposed to do with that question? In terms of problem scenarios, your first task is to find out which statute sections or cases apply to the situations described in the scenario, and then propose based on those statute sections or cases what the person described in the scenario should do. And once you do that, you also need to justify why you think that they should take that particular action by discussing further in more detail those statute sections and cases and explaining exactly how and why they are applicable to this scenario and why you believe that. And then finally you conclude by stating whether you think that a specific action is likely to happen, or whether you think that a person in the scenario should pursue a specific action. When it comes to essay questions, again, things are a little bit more tricky here because you would approach those questions differently depending on whether you are talking about a general essay question or a specific essay question or a quotation essay question. Again, more of that is covered in my First Class Law Essay Writing course, which I have linked down below. But the very basic, the most general structure of how you approach essay questions and what you're required to do in essay questions is firstly to read different materials on the area of law that the question is set on, and understand what this law is about, what this area of law is about, and also what are the different types of opinions made about this specific area of law. You then have to make a list of specific issues which are discussed in relation to that area of law, and then you have to choose a few of those issues that you need to that you are going to discuss, which is usually about 3 or 4 issues, and then you can set the headings in your essay based on those specific issues. I know this is still quite general, but again, like I said, more information is available in my first class law essay writing course. Once you've done these things, so you've recognized the type of a question you're dealing with, and you understood what is required of you, you would start researching the area of law. And the way that you would do it is you would identify, first of all, the statute sections and the cases that are mentioned in your lecture slides based on a specific, in relation to this specific topic that you are going to be dealing with. And then you would scan through the relevant chapters in a few different textbooks to try to figure out if any other sections or cases should be included. And usually those are cases for statute sections that I repeatedly mentioned in relation to a specific area of law. Once you have done that, you will note down any journal articles that are mentioned, let's say, in the footnotes, either in your lecture slides or the materials provided by your university, or in the footnotes of the textbooks on this specific topic, and you can grab a copy of them so that you can go through them. Now, when I say go through them, I wouldn't ask you to read through all of them beginning to the end, because some of them might not be relevant. So what you have to do is you really have to just selectively skim through different journal articles to figure out exactly what parts of them are relevant. I have also included another area about exactly how you can read any journal article in under 5 minutes. And this video is a part of my first class law essay writing course. And finally, once you have briefly read the journal articles, you need to try to figure out what the authors of those articles have to say about specific statute sections and the specific cases that you want to mention in your essay. And you should take a note of that because you'll be using those opinions later on in your essay. The final step is structuring your essay, and gosh, I can't emphasize this enough. So many students start writing their essay without having a specific vision of how they should structure it. And of course, there is an obvious structure whereby you have an introduction, the main body, and the conclusion, but you really have to also figure out what is going to be mentioned in the introduction, point by point, what is going to be mentioned in the conclusion, point by point, and then what headings you will have within the main body of your essay, and then what each of those headings will be talking about, point by point. In the introduction, generally, you would usually provide a little bit of a background about the area of law that you're talking about, and then provide a central argument, and then outline the essay. That's if we're talking about an essay question. If we're talking about the problem question, you would usually just restate the facts of the case, and then you would usually just explain what legal issues are involved in this specific scenario, and then briefly outline the structure of the essay again. In terms of the main body, this really gets a lot more complicated. Depending on the length of the essay, you will have between 3 and 5 headings in your essay. You have to come up with a short title for each of the headings, and you also have to figure out how those headings will be divided. Again, I don't have enough time to go through this with you right now, but it is something that I have discussed in great detail, both in relation to different types of essay questions and in relation to problem questions in my first class law essay writing course. So if you want to learn more about that, I would strongly encourage you to take the course. An alternative, if there are any times where you kind of have to write an essay and you're really, really struggling with the area of law and you just honestly can't figure out how to structure it, is you can always order a professional essay plan that is tailored to your specific essay question. And I also provide those types of plans. So I'll provide a link to my website, which has more information about that down below. That's it from me for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you click the subscribe button and also like the video so that I know I should create more of those.